Ukraine's genius Frontline trick turns Russia's own strategy against them. War has always rewarded those who think differently. History is filled with moments where strength alone was not enough, where fortified and numbers failed against intelligence and timing. On the battlefields of Ukraine, such a moment is unfolding. What began as a conventional invasion soon turned into a lesson in modern warfare, one that surprised not only Russia, but military analysts around the world. When Russian forces crossed into Ukraine, many believed the outcome was already decided. Russia possessed one of the largest armies on Earth, with vast reserves of artillery, armor, and manpower. Ukraine, by comparison, seemed outmatched in almost every traditional metric. Yet wars are not won on paper. They are won in reality, where strategy, adaptation, and human decision-making matter more than raw statistics. From the earliest days of the conflict, Russia relied on a familiar approach. Heavy artillery softened targets, ground forces advanced steadily, and pressure was applied across wide fronts. This method was designed to overwhelm defenses and grind resistance down through sustained force. It was a doctrine shaped by past wars, one that assumed the enemy would either collapse or retreat under constant pressure. Ukraine understood this doctrine very well. Rather than attempting to stop every advance or defend every position, Ukrainian commanders made a difficult but calculated choice. They would not fight the war Russia expected. Instead, they would allow Russia to follow its own playbook, while quietly preparing to turn that playbook into a liability. In selected areas, Ukrainian units pulled back deliberately. Positions that seemed vital were abandoned. Resistance appeared weaker than expected. To Russian commanders, this looked like progress. Maps showed advances, territory changed hands, and momentum seemed firmly on their side. But this sense of success was an illusion carefully constructed on the front line. As Russian forces pushed forward, they did exactly what their doctrine demanded. Supply lines stretched farther. Fuel, ammunition, and food had to travel longer distances. Command centers moved closer to the front to maintain control. What appeared to be strength was slowly becoming exposure. Ukraine was watching everything. Drones hovered silently above roads and fields. Intelligence flowed in real time. Movements were tracked, patterns identified, and vulnerabilities mapped with precision. Ukrainian forces did not rush to respond. They waited until Russian units were fully committed, fully extended, and increasingly dependent on fragile logistics. Then the focus shifted. Instead of confronting Russian troops head-on, Ukraine targeted what kept those troops moving. Strikes hit supply convoys, fuel depots, and ammunition storage. Command posts were disrupted. Communications faltered. Units at the front began to feel isolated, unsure, and unsupported. This was the genius of Ukraine's frontline trick. Russia's own advance created the conditions for its disruption. Every kilometer gained increased the cost of holding that ground. Every push forward made retreat more difficult. The deeper Russian forces moved, the more vulnerable they became. For the soldiers on the ground, the experience was disorienting. Advances that seemed uncontested suddenly turned dangerous. Areas believed to be secure were struck without warning. Drones appeared overhead, artillery fire arrived with precision, and small Ukrainian units launched sudden ambushes before vanishing again. This unpredictability had a powerful psychological effect. Confidence once lost is difficult to restore. Soldiers began to question whether supply trucks would arrive, whether positions behind them were safe, whether commands from above reflected reality on the ground. War is fought in the mind as much as on the battlefield, and Ukraine understood this deeply. Unlike traditional armies built around rigid structures, Ukrainian forces operated with flexibility. Small, mobile units were given the freedom to act on local intelligence. Decisions were made quickly, sometimes within minutes, not hours. When an opportunity appeared, it was exploited immediately. When conditions changed, units adapted without waiting for permission. Russian forces, trained for centralized command and predictable operations, struggled to respond. Adjusting strategy required time. Redeployments moved slowly. Each response came after the situation had already shifted. Ukraine was not just fighting smarter, it was learning faster. Technology played a crucial role in this transformation. Modern warfare is no longer limited to tanks and artillery. Information has become a weapon. With drones providing constant surveillance and real-time feedback, Ukraine maintained awareness across wide areas of the front. This allowed strikes to be precise rather than overwhelming, targeted rather than indiscriminate. Every movement, delay, or miscalculation could now be observed, analyzed, and exploited, turning the battlefield into a constantly evolving network of decisions rather than fixed lines on a map. Control of information meant control of tempo, forcing the enemy to react instead of act. As the conflict continued, the cost of Russia's traditional approach became increasingly clear. Holding territory required enormous resources. Protecting supply lines drained manpower. The pressure of constant attacks on logistics eroded morale. What was designed as a steady advance turned into a slow, exhausting struggle to maintain control, where gains on the map often came at a cost that outweighed their strategic value. Meanwhile, Ukraine demonstrated that defending does not always mean standing still. Sometimes it means shaping the battlefield, controlling the enemy's choices, and forcing them into situations where their strengths no longer matter. By refusing to fight on Russia's terms, Ukraine changed the nature of the war itself and dictated the rhythm of engagement. Military analysts across the world took notice. The conflict challenged long-held assumptions about modern warfare. It showed that smaller forces, when equipped with information, flexibility, and clear strategy, could resist and disrupt much larger armies. It proved that rigid doctrines struggle against adaptive opponents who think beyond traditional front lines and static concepts of defense. This was not guerrilla warfare in the classic sense, nor was it conventional defense. It was something new, a hybrid approach that blended technology, psychology, and tactical restraint. Ukraine did not seek constant confrontation. It sought advantage, timing, and control, choosing when and where the fight truly mattered. Russia entered the conflict prepared for a war it understood. Ukraine forced it into a war it did not. That difference changed everything. As the fighting continues, one lesson stands out clearly. Power in modern war is no longer defined solely by numbers or hardware. It is defined by understanding. Understanding the enemy's expectations, understanding their habits, understanding how to turn certainty into vulnerability. Ukraine's frontline strategy did not rely on overwhelming force. It relied on insight, and in doing so, it turned one of the world's most powerful military doctrines against itself. This war will be studied for years to come, not just for its destruction, but for its lessons. Lessons about adaptation, intelligence, and the evolving nature of conflict in the 21st century. If you found this documentary insightful and want more deep, well-researched stories like this, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support helps bring more in-depth documentaries to life.